We now return to Illinois Rising, presented by the Illinois Opportunity Project, the radio show discussing honest truth about Illinois policy and politics. Here's AM 560's Dan Proft.
Dan back with Pat on this edition of Rising and turning our attention to state legislative races, particularly in the suburbs. Mike Madigan has been spending a lot of money in support of Democrats running for state rep in the suburbs, both a handful of incumbent state reps in the suburbs as well as a bunch of challengers, particularly in districts that have long been held by Republicans, like my entire life, but are very competitive as we stand less than 2 months out of Election Day. One of the challengers to a Democrat incumbent in Eastern DuPage, to be specific, is Dr. Jay Kinsler. We've had him on the show before, running against incumbent Deb Conroy, who has taken $1.3 million from Mike Madigan over the last several cycles as she's been a state rep there, sort of a wholly owned subsidiary. We've talked about Deb Conroy before, how, kind of levels of being a complete toady functionary of the power structure. Deb Conroy is at the top of the list. So beholden to Mike Madigan is she that she did not want to essentially provide information about being sexually harassed by a Madigan field operative / lobbyist named Shaw DeCreamer, where reportedly DeCreamer literally picked her during the last election cycle in her campaign office, literally picked her up, threw her over his shoulder, and spanked her for not walking enough.
Have you've never done that to somebody? Am I wrong? Is that not appropriate to do?
I mean, holy cow. And Conroy sort of soft pedaled it like, oh, something happened, but I don't really want to talk about it. Right. I don't want to break bad on Madigan because I haven't gotten the okay to break bad on DeCreamer because I need the money so that I can continue to have my $70,000 a year job plus health care plus a guaranteed pension. And in return, I'll vote against property tax relief. I'll oppose property tax caps so that Madigan can continue to rake in millions as a property tax attorney, and that's how the fix works.
DeCreamer's like Billy Bats, Dan. Like you can't touch him until you go get permission.
Maybe Dr. Kinsler will be our Joe Pesci.
Maybe.
All right. Well. There's also been another incident that happened this week in that race involving yard signs, sort of a rite of passage if you're a Republican candidate anywhere in Illinois. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Republican nominee for state representative in Eastern DuPage. He's Dr. Jay Kinsler. Jay, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Dan and Pat, thank you so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
Well, why don't we start with whatever happened this week that involved your yard signs being taken and the novelty being your opponent, Deb Conroy, and her campaign admitting that, in fact, they were doing it.
Yeah, one of the comments on the social media, which just exploded with this event, was they're not very bright. And I think that's part of the reason why Illinois is in such a mess. So, as you know, I'm a physician. I do kidney transplants. In fact, I did a kidney transplant on Thursday night last week and work pretty much as well as all my volunteers. I have many volunteers that have day jobs and work long hours. So we get up Sunday morning. We're going to put up our bigger signs. We have permission in many places, private property. One was a car wash owned by a friend of mine right on St. Charles. And so we put up our signs on Sunday. I think we got up about 15 of them. And then we walked in the afternoon, and then Monday morning comes, I have to do surgery again, so I work all day. Driving home Monday, and I notice half our signs are gone on my drive home. And I was like, what the heck? I go, they haven't been up 24 hours. And fortunately, there was a constituent who actually saw the Conroy crew literally pull up about 3:30 on Sunday afternoon, probably the busiest corner of all of DuPage County at the corner of Route 83 in St. Charles. And they opened up their minivan. They jumped. There was like 5 of them. They jumped out. They pulled up our sign, and they put 3 small Conroy signs right in their place, leaving the other candidate signs there. So this guy said he was kind of nervous, and he was at the stop sign, and he rolled his window down. He was fumbling for his camera, his iPhone, and he was able to take pictures. And while he was doing it, he says, "Hey, leave Dr. Kinsler's sign alone." He goes, "That's against the law. I'm going to call the police." And he says they literally smiled for the camera. So we got great pictures of them.
Right.
And he had put that in, and off they went. And so there were other signs that were missing in some of the private property areas in that area. So, not surprisingly, the Conroy sign's right in their place. You would think somebody would not necessarily leave their name right where their crime was committed. But again, we're dealing with the Democrat Party here.
Yeah, Jay,
So,
and then Deb Conroy, who's obviously a longtime incumbent, admits to it, right? She cops to it because she has such a sense of entitlement and power and protection. This is like these guys smiling at the camera, right? There's no fear of repercussion or retribution. In fact, on her side, it's accepted practice. This is the type of culture you're up against. And Dan mentioned, and I know you know this, about her taking, $1.3 million from Madigan over the years, that she's a complete toady. What are you hearing? Obviously, you do an enormous amount of work in the district, going to events, going door to door. What are you hearing at the door about the connection between Deb Conroy and Mike Madigan and how people feel about it?
Well, the biggest thing that I hear is people are just suffering trying to pay their property tax. I mean, that's been the hugest thing. They also got clobbered with a 32% state income tax. They see she's voting to actually raise their income taxes. They see that she hasn't done anything to help control their property taxes. And as we all know, the higher your property tax goes, the more your home value goes down. You decrease your home value. So these people are just suffering. And, it's interesting. When you get $1.3 million from somebody, obviously you're going to owe them favors, and you're going to owe them a payback at some point. And I think we see this time and time again. And I get a real kick out of her mailers and her public comments where she said she's an independent voice for her constituents. Well, she's not really worried about her constituents. She's worried about paying Mike Madigan back for all the money she gets from him. And it's just perplexing to me why people don't see through this. Many of them are, and that's what our job is as we go door to door, is to be educating the residents on really what's going on behind the scenes, because they get just snowed with these mailers and the commercials and things. But she's absolutely doing the opposite of what she's putting out in these mailers. They're not honest people, and this is, a sign's a sign, and, people say, people take it as a sign. But it's just the integrity, it's the ethics. I tell my people, I see her stuff around all the time when I go door. We don't touch it, we leave it. That's part of First Amendment. People have a right to put their stuff out. And when you see these people, with their cameras, taking stuff blatantly, and then it was funny, at first they weren't admitting it, but then when they saw the pictures, then they had to admit it. And then the police officers we talked to said, well, she'll never. I said, you know what, all I want is I want my signs back, and I'm just letting her know that I'm not putting up with this BS, because I said, I'm busy, we're running a campaign, and I'm not going to be dealing with this nonsense. And
Well, it's also an issue.
Excuse me. He says she's never going to return the signs because that will be indicting her that she was actually behind it, and it was her team that did it.
Right.
And so later that same night, she puts on Facebook from her post sent to our Facebook. I think we're up to 8,000 hits on us. I mean, this thing just exploded. She says, "Here are your signs back," and all of them are back, including the ones that were on private property. So she's kind of implementing herself or her team that they not only took the signs in certain areas where we have it on camera, but also the other ones which were trespassing in private property. So, this is just the ethics, the background. These people, they're not good quality people, and I think that's why we have poor quality government.
Well, you know,
I want to change that.
But they're consistent. I mean, they don't respect private property as it pertains to somebody putting a sign in their yard. And then they don't respect private property in terms of the government taking your private property from you through property taxation. So there is a threat of consistency there. Oh, by the way, I just want to understand something too. I'm a lawyer, but I don't practice, so I'm not up on the law. If I steal something from a jewelry store and return it, am I still guilty of theft? Or does that go away because of I've admitted my crime and I returned? I'm just wondering how the criminal justice system works. It seems to work differently depending on the parties at issue.
It's fascinating. I love the comments, though. We laugh all day when we read something. One guy goes, well, yeah, you return the signs, but how about returning the $1 billion you stole from taxpayers over the last 6 years you've been in practice? And just
that's going to take a little
home
longer.
Equity you've stolen.
Yeah, the home equity, return the home equity. Yeah, that's probably not going to. I'm sure the police would tell you that's also not going to happen. Jay Kienzler, Dr. Jay Kienzler, kienzlerforillinois.com is the website. Again, in the interest of full disclosure, Jay is a candidate that I supported through a PAC that I run in the primary, and will support in the general against Deb Conroy for all of the aforementioned reasons. Jay, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. Take care.